Yo, we tried out Throne Liberty on stream the other day, so let's watch this video about it.
I was wrong.
Lazy
I
peon.
100% put my hands up and admit that I was wrong about Throne and Liberty. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really that hyped for this MMO. I genuinely thought there was no chance NCSoft could turn this game from an autoplay mobile piece of shit that we was all collectively memeing on, to a game that I'd actually enjoy. But I was wrong. In the past, I've said the combat in this game is clunky. It is clunky. Does it get better at level 50? Yes, a bit, but it's still clunky, and the movement at times drives me.
I found that immediately the combat was clunky. That's not what I've enjoyed about this game. So I think that Throne and Liberty is, if you wanted to like Black Desert Online, but you didn't like Black Desert Online because it didn't feel like the kind of MMO that you wanted it to feel like, this is a game you should try out, because you might like this one. That's the way that I feel about it. It doesn't have that kind of fast-paced, really action-based, really slick combat. It feels much more like it feels like if Grand Theft Auto and an MMO had a baby, like a tab targeting game that had all of the animations took a lot longer to go through. Like every time you turned, it felt like you were like moving an actual body around instead of it just like snapping back and forth the way other games do.
Insane. However, given the improvements the devs have made to the gameplay in such a short space of time, I think they've earned a bit of patience from myself that they'll continue to improve it further. Is the game pay to win? Yes, but all Korean MMOs are pay to win, and the pay to win ceiling isn't as high as other pay to win MMOs, so it's actually quite playable free to play. I was so close to quitting this game even after reaching level 50 because I wasn't really feeling the combat. At times I do still think it feels rough, and for the people who get to max level and decide to quit because they're not enjoying the gameplay, I get it. You're 100% valid, and there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made. For me, it wasn't until I really started spamming dungeons, mastering the mechanics, and actually getting used to the pace of game.
The dungeons look really, really cool in this game. I haven't been able to get into one yet, but I'm very excited to. One thing that I think is really interesting about MMOs in general, and especially about this one, is that people have this kind of idea and this concept in their brain with MMOs that they have to last for 10,000 hours or else it's not a good video game whatsoever. This game is completely free to download and play. Yes, there are pay-to-win aspects to it. You do not have to purchase those. There is no requirement on you to purchase them whatsoever. If you get 50 hours of gameplay out of this for free, that's a good gameplay loop. That's amazing amount of enjoyment. People think that video games have to be this kind of change your life experience and everything else has to melt away and this has to become the only thing that you care about forever after you play it. And I think that is the silliest, most disappointing way of living your life that I can possibly think of. A video game is entertainment, plain and simple. You do not require the new Beetlejuice movie to completely annihilate Game of Thrones, Mission Impossible, Sling Blade. What else do we have out there that's like, wow, what are these films that I'm pulling from? You do not require it to do that. So why do you require it from every video game that you play?
Gameplay in Throne, that something clicked and I said to myself, I get it now. And since that point I've been enjoying the game to the point where this isn't something I'm just going to drop after I've made my content about it. This video will be a simple format. In the first half I'll talk about all the things I like about Throne and Liberty so far, and in the second half I'll talk about all the things I dislike about the game. I'm not going to explain how the game works because I want to keep this video concise and content rich. Also, I'd like to give a big shout out to Canon, not only for his top tier content about Throne and Liberty, but also
concise and content rich. If I can figure out how to do that, it's over for all of these hoes, dude.
Helping me better understand the game privately in DMs. He's a cool guy and you should definitely subscribe to his channel. But before we jump into the review, do us a favor and support the content by listening to today's sponsor.
Yeah, do it. See?
Is the latest
listening to today's sponsor, fellas. Give the video a like. Subscribe to the Lazy Peon. It's great.
On October 10th. This is a cross-platform open-world game where you'll explore a world teaming with classic monsters. We're talking over 100 unique creatures with different skills and elements. Oh, is this the one that's ripping off Power World? All waiting to be tamed to join your team.
Yeah, it is. People are so angry about this game because it's ripping off Power World. I wonder what game Power World ripped off, dude. It's totally fine, dude. It's totally fine.
Dream base, assign monsters to gather resources and automate production, and don't forget to feed them and keep them well rested. Then gear up and head out into the vast world, battling fierce monsters alongside...
That's so funny that Power World did it, and then everyone was like, this is a great idea. Like, nobody tried to copy Pokemon hardly at all over the past couple of decades. Power World does it, and then everybody's like, it's the best idea.
Companions. But the real fun begins when you team up with your friends, explore together, conquer challenges, and build a thriving community. Just remember, in this world, alliances can shift, so stay sharp. Marabou Go...
How hard do you think it was for the Lazy Peon to make this whole sponsorship video without saying the words Power World?
Offers endless possibilities and exciting gameplay whether you're on phone or PC. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description.
Oh, it's like Genshin Impact,
now.
but for Power
Get ready
World.
to tame, build, battle, and explore in Marabou Go.
Give that bag, dude.
The
I would do it.
monster adventure awaits.
No problem.
So let's jump right into it. Throne at Liberty, things I like. We'll start on the topic of visuals. The game has amazing graphics. It's the best Unreal Engine 4 MMO I've ever played, and I think you could argue that it looks just as good or better than Black Desert Online. Some people say the visuals are generic, and I can see what they mean. It definitely looks similar to other Asian MMOs, but I actually like the art style.
Yeah, it's sort of got a bit of a Lord of the Rings sort of feel to me. And it might be the music, it might be the sort of idea, but all of these Unreal Engine MMOs have that same kind of feeling to me. It just sort of feels like that, like early Lord of the Rings, you know, like in the Shire, out amongst like the bar and everything. That's just what this kind of looks like to me.
I actually like the art style.
It just the big skyboxes, the sort of sloping hills, the towers off in the distance. It just looks like Lord of the Rings
Especially
to me.
with how
I don't know
vibrant
why.
and
It just
colourful
does.
everything is, from the UI to the world. Everywhere you point the camera, especially in the starting town, can be framed to just look like the most picturesque, beautiful scene I've ever seen in an MMO.
It is a gorgeous game.
Just look at how good this looks. But what makes it look so good? For me, it's the scale of the environmental assets in relation to the size of your character.
Yeah.
It's perfect. This combined with the game having an insanely fun...
Definitely. This is a thing that single-player action-adventure games really tend to capture very well when you're playing something like... the Batman Arkham games. Batman looks very large, but also everything else looks very large as well. When you're playing something like Guild Wars 2 or World of Warcraft, your character tends to look very small in comparison to everything else that's around them. It makes you feel like you're walking very, very slow whenever you're playing those games because there's a lot of ground for you to cover with every single step. Your legs aren't long enough to cover every single step. I remember the first time I ever played World of Warcraft, I was playing a Tauren, and I was convinced that Tauren walked too slow because their legs looked so big, and yet their walk speed was just as fast as everybody else's walk speed. This is a thing that I've thought about a lot throughout the years. I agree with him 100%. Like your scale compared to the environment scale is dead on in this game compared to other MMOs.
Our view distance. This was also something that I really liked about New Worlds, but I think Throne looks even better. I absolutely love the way armor looks in this game. Even early in the game, I thought my character looked so fucking cool with the armor he had equipped. I felt
That is literally the Mabinogi Kite Shield.
early in the game, I thought my character looked so fucking...
That is literally the Mabinogi Kite Shield. Hold on. That's literally the Mabinogi Kite Shield. That's nuts. They are porting Mabinogi to Unreal Engine, and I wonder if that asset is in there because of that, and they just bought it and used it for it. That's really interesting. Maybe this is something that I don't know about, but that is literally the Mabinogi Kite Shield.
With the armor he had equipped. I felt absolutely no need to buy any cash shop cosmetic, and
No,
I
totally
actually
not.
reckon the in-game gear you obtain from quests, mob drops, and bosses looks straight up better. Just look at my warrior. The shield, the chunkiness of the shoulder pads, the way he holds his greatsword.
Looks really
it's
good,
just
dude.
so cool.
Yeah.
The open world multi-level...
Yeah, I love the greatsword being held backwards like that. That's one of my favorite looks for when you're running with it. You do that in Guild Wars 2 as well, and it looks like Sora from Kingdom Hearts whenever you're running, and I love that running animation.
Dungeons in this game are also extremely impressive. The level design, depth, and sense of scale in these massive dungeons is unlike anything I've seen in another MMO. It feels like something from an anime. I also love that the game is one massive open world with no loading screens. I like the dynamic weather, seeing the trees blow in the wind, the dust particles, birds fly up as I run past them, and it's also cool how weather affects the gameplay with various effects.
Yeah, there's different things that you can gather in your gathering professions, depending on what is going on with the
The
weather.
game has epic music, kind of what you'd expect from a Lineage game, S-tier character customization,
Yeah.
all the sliders you could possibly want. The game has an insanely good photo mode. All that's missing is the ability to change the time of day, change the weather, and turn off the UI during this mode. And I also liked the cutscenes. A lot of them seemed pretty epic, but the one I liked the most was after the tutorial. The seamless transition of you arriving at the mainland, seeing the title screen and all the players load in. Very memorable. Things I like: gameplay. The game runs extremely well considering the amount of players and openness of the world. Sometimes you do need to turn the graphics down a bit
Yeah.
when there's hundreds of players on screen, but overall I was
There are definitely lots and lots of people at times, and on my computer, I've definitely noticed like a couple of stutters and things. The optimization is not exactly what I wish that it was, for sure. I think that if you're running a weaker kind of system, especially something that doesn't have at least a good CPU or at least a good GPU, one of the two in there. If you don't have something that's like sharing a big amount of that load, I think that you're going to have a lot of hard times running it at anything above lower settings. That being said, I think, I was just about to say, that being said, I still think the game's worth playing. The view is a big part of this game, for sure. Definitely check it out and see if you can play it, but it's an interesting
impressed
game.
with the performance, which is very important considering the pinnacle content of this game is Castle Siege with hundreds of players. The combat, whilst clunky, does feel impactful.
Yeah.
The feeling of my sword connecting with the enemy, the VFX, and
Is
the numbers
good, yeah.
popping up does feel...
The execute skill that you get in this game, I think it's 4 on your hotbar if you start off with great sword as your main weapon, or if you use great sword as your main weapon. It is very, very good feeling to use it. I mean, that smack of like 400 damage, even when you're low level, the way that it absolutely annihilates whatever it is, the ability to dash back and forth with that skill set, it's very nice. There are lots of things in this game that do feel really, really good when they're working. The only thing is the combat takes a little bit to get seated into. It took me, so when you first start out, one of the things that I've noticed is that you sort of have a very long time that you go without actually having any combat really happen. There's like less than 15 combat scenarios in the first 3.5 hours, and then it starts to pick up a little bit after that. So you don't actually have any opportunities to really work your way into the combat. World of Warcraft is a really good thing when you first start playing that game, where you jump into the game, and then the first quest that you get is killing a bunch of enemies, and the next quest that you get is killing a bunch of enemies, and the next quest that you get is killing a bunch of enemies, and then the next quest that you get is walking an item down to Goldshire. And people, like to meme on that all the time and talk a lot of smack about the fact that that's a trope of the MMO world. But it's very useful for actually getting you into the combat. And this game drops you into the game with 8-9 skills right off the bat. And then it doesn't even let you use any of them for a while, unless you go out into this area that everyone else is already fighting stuff in and just fight enemies for no reason. And it's such a difficult way to get into that combat zone, especially when it's kind of different than all the other ones.
Satisfying.
It just feels
I
different.
think the
It's heavier,
combat in this game has
slower,
quite a unique
sluggish.
feel to it, and it's quite grounded. It's not perfect. Definitely a lot of things I dislike about it, which we'll mention
It's
later
not
on.
fluid.
But at least it doesn't feel floaty like some MMOs. That being said, it does take a long time to get used to. Throne has 2 interesting, unique combat mechanics
I could see calling some of the skills floaty.
that I do quite like. The first being collision. As a warrior, I can push enemies into walls to stun them or push them off high ground with my shield rush. I also really like the Q block, although it took me a long time to get used to. Getting the timing perfect on this
That one's
actually feels
cool.
really nice and keeps
Yeah.
you engaged for boss fights. Throne
It's not quite as good as frame perfect dodging in Guild Wars 2. Like, I do enjoy dodge over blocking for sure. Like, there are lots of times that I, after playing Guild Wars 2, now want to reposition myself in Throne and Liberty, and it's just not available to me in the same kind of way. And I have Qs set to the same mouse button that I use for dodging in Guild Wars 2. So it's, I'm expecting that sometimes and I don't get it. But it does feel really nice when you hit that purple circle
really
right in the
feels
middle.
like a true MMO, very early in the game and throughout. It supports a massive number of players, it brings players together with regular events, and you're incentivized to group grind mobs, unlike Black Desert Online where you're penalized. I like that dungeons.
One thing that I think about this game that I'm not sure if it's going to hinder it or not, because I said the same thing about Black Desert Online back when it came out, and it's still stuck around. Although a lot of games, from the KMMO space tend to really stick around, so maybe that's just what does it. I don't feel like this game has a whole lot of personality to me. I know that they have the little mokai, whatever they're called, those little like floating stuffed animal plushies. I know that you transform into animals instead of riding mounts. I know that there is, a lot of storyline going on with like all of these monsters and everything, and all these like horrible things that are befalling people, and how you have like the star shard powers or whatever. I know there's all that stuff going on, but it just doesn't feel like a when you look at it, it kind of looks like Black Desert Online. And when you look at Guild Wars 2, it looks like Guild Wars 2. And when you look at Final Fantasy 14, it looks like Final Fantasy 14. And when you look at World of Warcraft, it looks like World of Warcraft. And when you look at RuneScape, it looks like RuneScape. When you look at MapleStory, it looks like MapleStory. And I just worry that these games that are coming out for the Unreal Engine will start to all kind of look like each other, and there won't be any kind of personality to draw people into it. And one of the things that first made me want to play all these different games was just being like, oh, I recognize that game. I've seen this game a lot. It looks like that. That's the way that one looks specifically, and I just worry that this game won't have the kind of lasting personality. There are shots of it that make me think that maybe it kind of looks like Final Fantasy 14. There are shots of it that made me think that it kind of looks like, Black Desert Online. So I don't know.
Are 6 players instead of 5. I don't know why.
I've said that, man. I've said that Guild Wars 2 looks like Diablo 3 or Diablo 4 in all honesty, so maybe I should shut my mouth.
It feels more social. And I like that bosses can be killed with less than 6 players if everyone does the mechanics perfectly.
That's cool.
I haven't seen any boss enrage mechanics yet, and on numerous occasions we've managed to kill bosses with only half the group due to a few people dying. It takes a long time, but it's doable. Things I like, content and systems. Even though I haven't gone to many conflict events yet due to not having a guild, I think it's a fair system to have some events be conflict PvP enabled and some peace. The same goes for open world dungeons turning full PvP at night time. It incentivizes players to join guilds and learn to PvP, but it's not so oppressive to the point where a PvE player can't enjoy the game and avoid this type of content. Obviously, the endgame siege PvP and GVG stuff is insanely fun. It's the best pinnacle content in any MMO really, in my opinion. The most fun I ever had in an MMO was my days of being in a hardcore siege guild back in Black Desert Online, so I'm really excited to try this part of Throne. I really enjoyed Throne.
I wonder where Lazy Peon actually comes from, MMO world wise. I've never really looked too much into his lore personally to know what's going on. Like, does he come from Black Desert Online? Is that the one that he like came out of and got popular for? Is that what he tends to play? Like, I come out of RuneScape, old school RuneScape. That's old school RuneScape and MapleStory realistically, and then more in the modern era, I've gotten into World of Warcraft and other tab targeting games. I've played a bunch of those over my lifetime. But those are the two. MapleStory and RuneScape are the two that I would say are like my home base, the things that brought me into this world that I cut my teeth in. So I wonder where he came from with that.
Solo boss challenge.
Like Asmon came from World of Warcraft. He's played plenty of others, but he came from World of Warcraft. You know what I'm saying?
Tadal's Tower. Going into it, I expected it to be gear gated, but every boss is just pure mechanics, and I cleared the whole thing with potato gear as soon as I hit level 50. I love that dailies stack up to 5 days before you're at your caps. You can literally not play for 4 days, then catch up on everything on day 5, and you're not missing out on efficiency. Unlike most Korean MMOs, Throne doesn't seem like it's too time consuming. Dare I say, I think this might be an MMO that respects your time once you're in the flow of doing the daily stuff.
Yeah.
This game's gear enhancement system is one of the least punishing I've ever seen in a Korean MMO. Yes, there's a bit of RNG, but it's really not much. You always get something for using your resources to improve your gear. There's no seemingly unreachable...
So what he's doing right here is he's showing, so what happens, you get these books that you use on weapons, armor, skills, all these different things, and then as you use them, it increases the percentage that it is to the next level, and it's a random percentage every single time. It seems like there's an RNG base. Sometimes you can get really lucky and get a lot. Sometimes you get less lucky and you get less. And so you have to use the books that way. The books are the things that you end up buying in the store. So if you wanted to, you could just buy a whole bunch of books. You could upgrade all of your gear. I'm sure that you could get very strong very quickly if you wanted to do that. But I haven't had any problems needing to do that yet.
Ceiling like in BDO. I also think the way you obtain gear is relatively well designed too. For a Korean MMO, I was surprised that I didn't find a whole lot of
Yeah, the way you obtain gear is pretty good. Especially like I've just been crafting gear so far, and it's literally just a list of items, and then it tells you where you can get those items, and then you just go and get those items, and then you just craft the gear.
inconvenience. Usually these games will have weight limit systems, almost no inventory space, a lot of create problem to sell solution, but there doesn't seem to be too much of that in this game, so far anyway. I think it's cool that the chat has an auto-translator built in, and I also like that the devs are listening to feedback and seem to be fast at improving the game. This game is unrecognisable now compared to what it was a year and a half ago, so hats off to the devs for the changes so far. Next, let's discuss the things I dislike about Throne, once again starting with the visuals. I absolutely hate turning into a dog to run around. My character looks so fucking cool in human form,
dude.
but I need to transform into a shit animal and go through a weird animation. Bro, just let me fucking sprint. It would be so much better.
Let you sprint, dude, give you a mount. Like, what happened to MMOs just giving you mounts that you can jump on? Like, I get this concept. I know that you're trying to set yourself apart and give yourself some kind of visual identity, because I know that you're lacking it in general in your game. But dude, give me mounts and let me collect them. Make there be thousands of them and let me earn them in game. World of Warcraft did it best. Getting mounts feels really good. I like that there are super rare ones that I can get in the game that look really, really nice, that are very difficult to come by, so that when I see somebody riding around on that mount, I go, whoa, that dude has done a really hard dungeon Y 20,000 times and he got that drop. That's super cool. I like those kinds of things. Put those in your game. I get that you're going to have skins for your transformations. Daddy don't care. Let me show off everything that I have at once. I want to show off the mount. I want to show off the armor. I want to show off the weapons. I want to show off the titles. I want to show off what guild I'm in. I want it all to be visible at the exact same time when I'm standing in town. Do that. That is such a big deal in video games. Do that. Let me flex.
Delete the animal shit and give us a sprint instead. I really don't feel like the morphs add anything to the game, and for me, I'd prefer if they just took the traditional MMO approach of mounts instead. But at the very least, they need to improve the transition from animal form to human form, because it's very janky. The camera zooms in, your character often desyncs on this transition, and it doesn't feel instant and responsive. On top of that, there's no option to enable the animal form only when shift is being held. You need to double tap shift to enable and instantly disable it. So in boss fights, you often linger in animal form for a few seconds longer than you'd like, wasting stamina, and as a result not having enough stamina for a Q block. It just feels bad. Actually seeing which target you're targeting can be difficult at times. The indicator's just this small orange bracket around an already orange nameplate.
100%. I also had a lot of trouble with this. I did not find this game to be as snappy as Guild Wars 2 as far as aiming at the enemy that I'm trying to aim at. In Guild Wars 2, I quite literally never have this problem. I did change a whole bunch of auto-targeting things, and it seems to work a lot better. Go through and look at all of the different toggle switches that are available to you in the settings menu. There is quite a lot in there. This game shows its auto battler routes when you go in there and look at all of that. That is what I would say to you.
When you're getting ragged by 10 mobs at once.
But it doesn't, it's still not as good as Guild Wars 2.
You can't really
Guild Wars 2 was Guild Wars 2 has some of the best you don't have to tab target in this tab targeting game tab targeting that I've ever seen in my life. Like, it helps, it's useful, but so much stuff cleaves in Guild Wars 2 that you almost never have to worry about it. Point yourself at the enemy and smack them in the face, dude. Hit as many of them as you can.
And see your target, so perhaps the nameplate on your targeted enemy could benefit from some customization options. Things I dislike: gameplay. The movement when it comes to flying, grappling, and climbing.
Yes, the grappling is garbage,
janky
bro.
Animation locks and camera zooms on grappling. The climbing is barely.
It is so freaking difficult. There's a grapple point. There's a grapple point right here. There's a grapple point right here. I want to zip to this one and then zip to this one. It is so hard to do that, and you take massive fall damage when you come down from it. My first death in this game, no joke. I see a lighthouse that I want to get up to. There's 2 grapple points leading up to it. I grapple the first one. It throws me way up in the air, dude, like massively above it, like zips me up and just like, and I keep going with like tons of momentum. I'm doing my damnedest, tapping the button as much as I can, looking right at the next grapple point, can't get a hold of it, fall all the way back to the ground, just smack dead immediately, dude. It made me so frustrated in that moment. It's such a simple thing, dude. Genshin Impact got it right, okay? If you can't do what Genshin Impact does, don't put it in your game.
You'll see tons of inclines that you think you can jump over.
Dude, totally. Not only you think you can jump over them, all this little geometry that you're seeing, like all this geometry that you're seeing, all these polygons that are sticking out that you assume that you can jump onto or like use as ledges, a lot of times you can't.
But you can't, and the transition from flight to human form is not smooth. The thing that makes this even more annoying is that there's so many quests and bosses in this game with jumping puzzles and mechanics that utilize the grapple and flight. So much so that you'd think this game has the movement fluidity of Mirror's Edge. It doesn't.
No.
The movement feels really shit sometimes, and it's the biggest area of improvement that I'd like to see.
Me too.
Now, to be fair to the devs, movement used to be even worse. Until recently, there was inertia when changing directions.
That's what I'm saying,
I actually
dude.
had a bug where this...
You feel like you're turning, like you have to turn all the way before you can start running the other direction or something. It's hard to explain. Like I said, the closest thing I can think of to talk about with it is Grand Theft Auto. Like, it just feels like that kind of like weighty, like big body movement back and forth instead of like the snap back and forth the way you do in other MMOs.
Inertia was re-enabled for my character, and it felt like absolute dog shit to just move around the world. Thankfully, a relog fixed this issue, but definitely for me, one of the game's biggest weaknesses is the feeling of movement. As for combat, there's still a lot of clunky combat abilities. The game has improved, but there's still more that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Now, when I say clunky, I'm mostly referring to a combination of your abilities and how they tie in with movement. The Warrior's Dash, for example, has a micro animation lock at the start and end of the ability. As a mage, if you begin casting a spell at max range, but the target moves even 1 centimeter out of range, your spell is cancelled without any buffer zone like other MMOs usually have. There's just so many abilities with micro animation locks that root you in place, and even if it's just for half a second, taking away a player's free...
World of Warcraft does MMO combat so well, especially like vanilla MMO combat really, really well. Guild Wars 2, I think, has its own unique thing going on that also feels what I would say almost equally as good, if not equally as good. But there's something about the World of Warcraft combat that I can't quite put my finger on. It's instantaneous. It's snappy. It just happens. You press the button and the thing happens. You have so many you have so many buttons that when you're using all of them properly, you're like, whoa, I'm a wizard. But when you're not, it feels kind of slower. The thing that I think Guild Wars 2 does a lot better with is that its cooldowns are much, much shorter. So like you don't really have to worry so much about like being on super long cooldowns or like trying to build up to cast a skill, at least for my class. Like it's very like the things just happen and the cooldowns are the only thing you really have to worry about, and you just keep your health up and you just keep attacking. Throne and Liberty, the cooldowns are extremely long. They're super long. I don't know what it is, dude. Like every skill that I have is like a 12-second cooldown, and it's so frustrating because like you're auto attacking and you'll go minutes, for me at least, you'll go minutes without using a skill, really. Or not minutes, that's not true. You'll go seconds, multiple seconds without using a skill, just auto attacking. You're like, gee whiz, dude, this feels really bad.
Freedom of movement is what makes it feel clunky. I'd happily go more in depth on this in a separate video, but people keep telling me the combat gets less clunky with more gear. I think they're misunderstanding my complaint. I understand that cooldowns get shorter, attack speed gets faster.
I was just about to say, as you level up your skills, the cooldowns might get shorter, though.
Some skills can instant cast with skill specializations, I get that. But unless there's an item that literally reads, removes the animation lock on X ability, then I've failed to see how progressing further in the game will make it less clunky.
That is my biggest problem with Guild Wars 2, I think, is that you cast a skill and the animation of the skill can last such a long time sometimes that you have to make sure that you're not canceling that animation by accident by pressing another button. And I do appreciate that in World of Warcraft, the combat is just like when the skill goes off, you are done with that skill and you can move on to the next one. When the skill bar is filling up, when you're casting a spell and that meter is filling up, if you cast something else during that or if you move, you'll cancel that skill. But like once it goes off, bro, you are free from that. And it's so difficult sometimes. If there is a way to tell what you're doing in Guild Wars 2 when you're casting the skill, like where at in that animation you are, I have have not personally been able to see it. So it can be really frustrating when you're in the middle of a big skill and then you cancel it. That can be really annoying. And like, this game has really clunky animation things too.
In addition, Throne also has a few AoE abilities that I feel should be usable without a target which aren't, Piercing Strike being an example with Sword and Shield, and Devastating Smash plus Guillotine Blade AoE spec for Greatsword. I think the devs should try to make almost every ability usable without having a target, similar to how it works in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah.
Just a small thing, but I dislike how your character will often have their movement interrupted and blocked by...
This guy makes so many of the same comments about things. I feel you, Lazy Peon. I feel the same way, dude. I feel the same way about these games, bro. Like, it seems so obvious, but I know that, like, when I say all of these things over the course of a video, as I'm reacting to what he's saying, that it becomes so jumbled in the end. You can't just go through and make a list of things to fix to make it perfect because they're all tied into each other. And I know that that's not how it works, but it is so frustrating because it's like, haven't you played all these games that I have? Don't you know what the ups and downs of each thing are? Don't you know what would have worked best in this world? And they don't.
The smallest of rocks or inclines sticking out of the floor. Some of the arena maps I find annoying that they've incorporated the grapple mechanic to their map design, which doesn't feel good. No. In fact, here's a good example. I fell off the map, I tried to grapple back up, and I'm just completely bugged out for a solid minute. I can see how this would be fun if the grappling was actually good, but unfortunately it isn't. The combat block feature can feel a bit scuffed when you're trying to solo AoE farm. All the circles going off at different times, you're running out of stam, and you can't get any channeled abilities off. I think in PvE you should have like 2 or 3 seconds where you can't be CC'd after a successful block. I dislike that sprint and block have the same stamina usage, as when you're grouping up mobs to...
Dude, it is kind of annoying that, like, it's not a mount, it's a sprint. It's the same thing with your glide. So you're using your stamina when you do it. I think one of the best things about mounts in most other games is that it saves your personal stamina. Like in Elder Scrolls Online, you have a sprint, but when you get on your mount has its own personal stamina bar, so it saves your stamina so that you can sprint on your mount to the area that you want to get to and then jump off of it and have full stamina to start immediately attacking things. It's really annoying in video games whenever they don't let you just go from running to place to engaging in combat. I do not want to get there and then have to let my little guy catch his breath. I get it. Once you're in combat, totally, like let my stamina drain down, do all those things. If I'm not engaged in combat, do not decrease my stamina when I'm running around. It is a dumb, pointless mechanic that all it does is create a barrier every single time that you want to get into a fight. Where you're like, well, I gotta wait for my stamina. Gotta wait for my stamina bar to fill back up. I sure am. I sure do wish my guy had more stamina. And then, like, I hate it, dude. I hate it in Genshin Impact where they're like, now you got to get more rings of stamina so that you can fly for longer, so that you could climb up mountainsides for longer. I hated that in Breath of the Wild, too. It's like, I don't want to do this. Just let me be able to explore. Let me do the thing. Find other ways of keeping me out of things. Like, because it feels like I should be able to do it, and I kind of can if I cheese a little bit. Like, all you're doing is trying to ask me to break your game.
Farm, you simply have no stamina left to block once they're all grouped up. It feels bad. Additionally, I dislike that after you've killed all your enemies and should theoretically be out of combat, your travel morph still has its stamina drain as if you're in combat for a solid 10 seconds after it.
Okay, so it doesn't actually happen. It just happens way longer than I think that it should. Good. And I've been noticing that, and I've been like, why is it draining?
Playing melee in large-scale encounters, both PvP
I thought it was just
PvE,
a feature of the game.
Can feel bad sometimes, because you basically need to be on top of your target to hit them. So for events, you might feel like you're just running around with ranged DPS killing everything before you can even reach your target. Perhaps there should be a bit more tolerance in regards to the distance that melee need to be to use their abilities.
Dude, that shield, that kite shield is so distracting to me, dude. Like, it is just the map. Like, you got to think, I've spent, Mabinogi's another one. I guess I should have said that too when I said Maple Story RuneScape. Mabinogi's another one I spent years of my life in, just like thousands of hours. I've seen that kite shield so much. Like, I've stared at it so much. I've stared at that one. I've stared at it being black. I've stared at it being red. I have stared at the golden, black, red, like white hybrid version of it that they have. Like, it's so distracting that they used that kite shield for me personally.
Things I dislike: content and systems. Re-rolling weapons becomes harder the longer you play. I don't mind how they've designed the skill leveling and mastery systems, but at least sell us the ability to transfer masteries or buy skill conversion books off the cash shop. It wouldn't even be pay to win. If people stop enjoying their character, they'll quit. If they have the option to spend money to try a different playstyle without feeling like they've wasted tons of time, then they might stick around. The auction house is extremely laggy. I hope this is just a launch issue, but it's not been very responsive since launch. I dislike the micro FPS freezes you get when you open and close the map, as well as other UI elements. This could
What I was saying at the beginning of the video.
Some of the quests during the leveling process were awful. Thankfully, leveling is quick, but from level 30 to 45 it felt like every quest was either a puzzle, a jumping puzzle, or utilised the game's awful climbing mechanics. This entire part of the game would feel better if they improved the feeling of movement. The new player experience in Throne is not the best, in that the game does a poor job of teaching you about its progression systems, traits, dissolving gear, and...
Does it? If you do the blue quests, it shows you everything, but you have to understand not only MMOs, but also gacha games, I think, in order to be able to know what's going on from the get-go. I want to say that he's wrong about this, but I also play a lot of gacha games, and I have to remember that these systems are from gacha games and not necessarily from MMOs. Now, I don't play a ton of KMMOs. I do play quite a few, but not a ton of KMMOs, so maybe they exist in them. But the sort of collect materials to like boost up your gear kind of thing, you know, that whole system is very gacha, very Genshin, very Zenless Zone Zero, very Wuthering Waves. There we go. Very gacha games. So maybe that's why I think that the game did an okay job of explaining them, because they were like, this is what you do. And I was like, oh yeah, I know what that is. And I just went for it. So maybe that's why. So if you haven't played those games, your mileage may vary compared to mine.
The procurement of resources, to name a few. There's a lot of pitfalls for new players to mess up their characters, especially for those that don't watch YouTube guides. And finally, the game is pay to win. It's not BDO.
I definitely plan on watching way more YouTube guides before I get back into this game, which I'll probably be streaming again on Monday, I would say. Before I get back to it, I plan on watching a lot more YouTube guides, so I'm like ready to get there for sure.
Pay to win, and a free-to-play player could definitely play the game, get geared, and enjoy it. It's not going to be as fast as a pay-to-win player, but it's achievable. Finally, here's a small list of improvements I want for Throne of Liberty. Forgive me if some of these are already in the game on Korea. I don't play KR, so I don't know what's coming soon. Considering that a lot of the in-game armor is just as good or better than cash shop cosmetics, let us collect the appearance of armor that we've obtained in the lithograph book, so we can then use that as cosmetics too.
Totally.
I would like more than 3 ability loadouts. 3 is not enough. You have multiple for PvP, PvE, solo, small scale, large scale, and so on.
ESO has this exact same problem that do you guys know when I say ESO, I'm talking about Elder Scrolls Online. It has this exact same problem where you can buy more in the cash shop, but like, dude, they only start you off with, I think, 2 at the beginning, and it's like, dude, I need a tank, I need a healer, I need a DPS, I need at least 1 PvP, that's 4, but just that I need off rip. You have to give me more than 2, like, it's not enough. Well, I need a tank, I need a healer, I need a DPS, I need a ranged DPS, I need a magicka build, so I need a stamina, a magicka, a tank, a healer. I need a stamina, magicka, DPS, tank, healer, and then I need a PvP. So I need 5. I need 5 at least. Give me more than 2, dude. Sorry, I haven't played that game in a minute.
On more abilities.
I think I'm coming up on another ESO binge, dude. I feel it kind of coming on a little bit. I can't explain it, but I feel like I'm coming up on an Elder Scrolls Online binge. My Maple Story binge has been very lucrative.
Overhaul the movement system. We need improvements to the grappling, jumping, and vaulting mechanics, as well as smoother transitions in and out of Morph. Make it easier to re-roll, sell weapon mastery transfers on the cash shop if you want. The game's already pay to win, so giving people the option to pay to re-roll is completely fine.
Totally.
Make a help chat or buddy system to help new players avoid mistakes and common pitfalls.
Ooh, that would be good.
The ability to change the time of day.
I like the help chat. The only problem that I tend to have with help chat is that a lot of times people just dump a whole bunch of information on you but don't actually give you any useful advice whatsoever. Like, I hate when people tell you a whole bunch of things that you could do. It's like, how about you tell me what to do? You know, like, how about you tell me the exact thing to do, and then I'll do that, dude. Because that's what a guide does for me. When I look up a guide, man, I'm gonna follow that sucker, dude. I'm not gonna skew it all until I start like really noticing things myself.
Day, change the weather and turn off the UI during photo mode, add a small duration of CC immunity following a successful block, give us more customization options to help us see which enemy we have targeted, and finally, delete the furry stuff, get rid of it out of the game, and send whoever decided it was a cool idea over to Square Enix to go work on Final Fantasy XIV. Overall,
Bro, he's not wrong, dude. Why is Final Fantasy XIV the furry MMO nowadays, dude? He's so right about that. Like, I feel like World of Warcraft has their own furry stuff, like the Worgen really brought, I know. They had Tauren before, dude. I get it. Not like the Worgen, dude. The Worgen brought the furries in hard, dude. Like they did. You can't deny to me that they brought the furries in. Now we got the scalies in. It doesn't matter. Anyways, what is up? Why is Final Fantasy XIV the furry MMO? Is it like why is the 1J MMO the one that's furry? And like, no offense to the furries, dude. It's just like, come on, people who aren't furries like tend to have some kind of reaction to it. Not me personally. Listen, I'm a freak of all types, my friend.
it took me quite a while to get used to it, but I'm finally enjoying Throne of Liberty, and it definitely seems like a game that will appeal to me in the long term, provided the devs can keep improving it and they don't ramp up the pay-to-win ceiling to be any higher. As an ex-BDO player, an old-school RuneScape enjoyer, someone whose best MMO memories are those large-scale epic PvP encounters, I think this game is made for someone like me, but I also think Throne has a lot more mass appeal than Black Desert Online, considering the PvE side of the game is actually really fun and accessible with some satisfying boss mechanics. That being said, this game will not be for everyone. If you can't get used to the at times clunky gameplay, then you're 100% justified and valid, because my experience is that it isn't something that really gets much better, but you do get used to it and you learn to appreciate its quirks. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Throne and Liberty so far, and if you enjoyed the vid then help us out with a like. What I'll probably do in a few months time is follow up this video with one titled Throne and Liberty after 1,000 hours or something, so subscribe and keep an eye out for that.
My general thoughts are basically the same as his. He's significantly further than I am. I'm nowhere near as far as he is in it, but my general thoughts are the same as his. In fact, his last wrap-up line about like, this game gets better only because you get used to it is the same way that I feel about Maple Story, that like if you hate it straight from the get-go, do not play it. It does not change. But if you like play it and you're like, this is kind of like difficult, like someone could do this better, it's like keep playing it, it gets better. Like you get better at it, you learn how to deal with it, it becomes very snappy and fluid. So if you like a little bit of it, if you're like, this could be a cool thing, but I don't know about it, like, continue to play. And that's the way I feel about this game. So I'm excited to continue to play and see what it's got for me. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video. If you're here, like Lazy Peon's video and subscribe to him. He deserves it. He's obviously makes incredible content, some of the best MMO content that's out there. His thoughts and mine were a lot of the same. So, I find that interesting. I'll see you guys on the next one. Everyone be safe and bye.